All right, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking about real music in real time for real people, just like you and me. Have a very special guest. We've had him before. He's a great musician, a great writer, arranger, jack of all trades, and I would say a master of all of them. And he comes to us from the future because he's talking to me, and it's Thursday where he is. It's only Wednesday where I am. So this is pretty interesting. Graeham Goble, how are you, sir?
I'm really great, Dave. Nice to meet again.
Great to have you back, sir. Uh, your band, the original LRB, Little River Band, released two just superb collections, one called Masterpieces and one called Ultimate Hits. Is that correct?
Yes, there are two releases. 50, I think 53 songs or 52 songs from our catalogue, but also a couple of stunning live performances, just stuff that we haven't ever put out, and it's all been remastered. A couple of the tracks have actually been remixed from the multi-tracks. They just sound like amazing, and it was just this has been a 5-year journey for me to get this done, and what can I say? I mean, Masterpieces in particular is my favorite Little River Band album ever, and it's interesting that when I put this to the record company, they were sort of saying, well, yes, we'll remaster and put out a new Ultimate Hits, and then I was pushing this idea of all these favorite tracks that I wanted to put on Masterpieces, my favorite tracks, but also fans' favorite tracks, and they weren't too sure about it. But of course, that's the album that everybody wants to talk about, and because it's just like getting a brand new Little River Band release, because a lot of the fans have just gone and bought the Ultimate Hits, and now we've got 25, 26 songs of Masterpieces. That's like having a new double album, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's amazing, and a lot of these songs, for the Americans who are watching this video, these songs are very relatable in the sense that these all sound like fresh Little River Band songs that you missed the first time around, and really just a brilliant collection of songs. And it's somewhat chronological, but as you mentioned, there are some live performances here that I think are breathtaking. The Little River Band doesn't necessarily get the credit it deserves when it comes to vocal blending. We know that, of course, the late Glenn Frey had some great things to say about you guys, but I'd put you guys right up there with groups like the Beach Boys, the Bee Gees, ABBA. I mean, you guys had an amazing vocal blend. When did you realize that your voices combined in such a way that, I mean, your ears just perk right up? I mean, these guys can sing, and you were
Yeah.
part of that.
Well, that was always my mission from when I started, like right back in my late teens in Adelaide, when I was starting to form bands. Like everything was always geared towards the vocal, because my favorite bands of all time have been incredible vocal bands like the Beatles, the Hollies, Mamas and Papas, ABBA. There's not many, but there's a dozen or so bands that it's the vocals that make it exciting. And so whenever I was forming bands, which is really where I started with forming around my own songs, I was always looking for powerful singers, and so eventually we arrived with Little River Band. Like a big component of my work vocally has been having Beeb Birtles there, because Beeb is one of the great harmony singers of all time. Like his pitch and his awesome vibrato and his just attention to detail on the tail of things. And unless you experience it, you don't realize. It's like a magic relationship that you can get into with a dear friend or a romantic partner. It's like diamonds to find these things, if you ever find them at all. And I was, as soon as I heard Beebe sing and then I harmonized with him, like it was so powerful to me. It was sort of like a soul that came into my life, and I just knew that this was the person that I needed to be with. He was part of the vision that I had for vocals. And similarly, when we first sang with Glenn Shorrock, it was just a magic blend. It was sort of like the three parts become something else. It's bigger than the individuals. There's a magic blend that's there. And it also happened when John Farnham joined the band. The harmonies with, particularly with Beebe, John Farnham, and myself. There's two examples of that on masterpieces. One is the glorious Love Letters that I think is just maybe. Is it the best live singing ever done? I don't know, but it's hard to imagine anything better. It's so amazing when you hear the three of us just belting it out on, and the phrasing and the tales of, look, it's like one person singing here, but it's just incredible. So I had to put Love Letters on there, and also the other live song was I Know It, which Beebe sang lead on, but then the harmonies with John and I are amazing. So I've been fortunate to sing with Glenn Beebe and myself, but then also with John Beebe and myself, and they were different experiences, both wonderful. And so I would suggest that I've been part of two of the greatest vocal bands of all time, and it's a joy. I mean, I can go back there in my mind and think, and that's why I wanted to put these albums out, just to say, well, look, I'm going to leave the planet, but this at some point, but these will be around as maybe a benchmark that for what can be achieved with vocalizing, at least vocalizing, leaving aside the instrumentation, which is like, wow, stunning.
Yeah. The production on these are right in league. I'm thinking about who produces like this and who gets sound quality like this. And I think of like Alan Parsons, for instance. I mean, the meticulous attention to detail here. When you guys went into the studio, I know you worked with George Martin. You worked with John Boylan, who is just a very well-known producer, a lot of 70s music. John Boylan was a part of, and he seemed to get a lot out of you guys. Was there a really strong partnership with John and with George and with the other producers that you had worked with throughout the band's tenure?
Well, I mean, the biggest, I guess it was John Boylan that came in at I think Diamantina Cocktail, and he was there for the next two or three albums, and he was the one that we spent months and months and months with John, and he came down to Australia and was a great contributor and assisted us to go to a next level in the studio. And then but the person that has been with me since my very first recording, even prior to Little River Band, was our recording engineer, Ern Rose, who was really, he's like the fifth Beatle. Like, he was there all the way through. He was our live mixing engineer. He was my teacher vocally. We used to spend like days and days and days trying to get things in tune, and because there was no post editing in our era. You see, this is what the artists of today, if you said to them, okay, there's no post editing, you just have to get it perfect. Well, that's what we were faced with. And when you hear these recordings, I'm struggling to hear anything that's out of tune or out of time or anything, because I remember one day working with Ernie, like I spent about 3 hours singing one line just to get it perfectly in tune with the feeling, because you're looking for the feeling, you're looking for how in tune it is, what's the timing of it. But you've got to, when you're singing that, you've got to keep the emotion there. There's so much required to get one line, let alone a whole record. And so as we were doing that, like if you like, Olympic training with Ernie at the helm, we got to the point where we could simply, by the time we got to Sleeper Catcher, we could just put a track on and stack the harmonies for the whole song around 3 microphones, and then just double track it perfectly. And when we got to Playing to Win with John Farnham, we were doing the same. Like we could just close our eyes and you just know where it was like singing, 3 people singing with one voice, because what great harmony singing is about, it's about singing in perfect sync with another person. So you sing your part, but you're listening. Like when I was recording, I would have my vocal in the middle, loud, and then I had the other 2 singers left and right. So I can hear breaths, I can hear vibrato, I can hear where the notes are ending, and they can as well. So we can just close our eyes and sing, and like slow down together, speed up wherever it might be, you know. And if there's a line that we need to do, we can just do a quick rehearsal, check it once, and then drop it in. Like, it was amazing. I mean, it's something that I miss actually, because in these day and age where you just stack everything and then you don't really care if it's a bit out of tune, you just fix that later. And yeah, there's nothing like it. It's sort of like running the 100 meters every day of my life back then.
Well, it certainly requires a high level of skill, patience, repetition. These are all virtues, I think, that the music business today might not really comprehend in the way that bands like LRB did, and maybe it's not appreciated as much as it should be. And I think that's one of the reasons why when you listen to these masterpieces, and you're not here, at least in the United States, listeners might not be as familiar with these songs and with these album titles. Just you guys were kind of this anonymous, faceless band for many years. We knew who you were, but we didn't know what you looked like, you know. And so I think a lot of that, unfortunately, may not have worked in your favor. And then in the 1980s, when John joined the band, it seemed that American music had moved on, or the record labels weren't doing their due diligence, getting your songs to American audiences. I'm thinking you guys probably did better in Australia and in other countries. So a lot of folks don't even know about John and his work with the band. And here on the radio, as you probably know, a good number of the songs that were done in the late 70s and into the early 80s are still being played every day, Graeham.
I know, thank goodness. I know, yes.
And,
yes.
You know, and some of these songs are starting to take on kind of their own life here in a new way, because people, they hang on to these songs, they hang on to these great memories, and they can hear these vocal harmonies. And I don't know if the radio stations here in the States have, you know, downloaded a copy of these albums. They really should, and put them out there, because it's a stunning upgrade to those earlier versions.
Yep, I know. Well, that was the mission, and I'm sure that we were successful. I must give a shout out to our mastering engineer, who was Ross Cockle, who Ross was the recording engineer for our first 2 or 3 albums. And the reason why that worked so well was because he just did not want to interfere. All he wanted to do was just to bring it up a little bit, clean it up with today's technology. He had an awesome, very expensive chain that he put the mastering through, but he wasn't about making it too loud, you know, over compressing. It was about keeping the beauty in our music, because he was there on our first album, so he knows how the record should sound. So the trouble with today is that everything is remastered and remastered and remastered, and it just gets too harsh and too loud and basically too annoying, to be honest. So that was the mission, is to try and get it as user-friendly as we could, but just bring the level up just a little bit, not too much. So
Right.
it's not over compressed. It gets soft, it gets loud, it's got the emotion and the spirit of it. What we recorded is there, and it's now there for all time. So following this, we have actually completed the remastering of the whole catalogue. So all of the studio albums will be they're out on Spotify, but they'll be coming out on CD eventually. So everything on digital now is all remastered with bonus tracks, and
Did you get to the MCA stuff as well?
no, we didn't do that because they sound pretty good, but the problem with the MCA tracks is that we've never they didn't sell great, Dave, and they never recouped. So we don't earn any royalties off of those. So there's no point in putting more work into that and spending more money on them when we don't earn anything back. So the MCA albums are released, and they're in their original form, and they sound great. But we didn't feel like these are all the Capitol recordings that we've done. Everything on EMI Capitol. So the MCA albums are a separate thing, and we haven't bothered with those.
Yeah, no, it's understood. I have a couple of those MCA releases. I really enjoyed. That's when I was in the music business, and I was at a radio station and playing a track or two off the Monsoon record, and that's, I think, how I got reacquainted with how good you guys were. Because again, that lineup with Glenn, disappeared during that time period during the 80s. And I'm thinking that for some reason it just didn't work here in the States or the record label. What was the situation with that? Do you have any insight as to the
well, I have an opinion. Like when we we finished in 1986, we finished. We did the last album for Capitol, and that was No Rains, and that had no support at all and disappeared. And sadly, one of our greatest recordings, no one sort of knows anything about, but there are some tracks on masterpieces from No Rains. So then there was a couple of years where we stopped, and then in 1988, new management approached us to with an idea to record for MCA, but they were talking to Irving Azoff at that point, because Irving Azoff was the head of that. He was the person signing acts to MCA, and so we thought, well, this was good because we knew how powerful Irving is, and but then by the time we signed the recording contract and then we recorded, he left MCA. He went to do something else anyway. This was obviously before the Eagles reformed. So our champion, who was interested in and signed us to MCA, had gone. So I think what happened is that there was just nobody at the company that had the passion and the heart and the interest for Little River Band. It was a Irving Azoff pick, and he wasn't there anymore. So there was zero to none promotion. So I don't think we even, I can't remember, I don't think we even toured. We didn't even tour on it, so it was just, that's the way it was. But, that's just life.
Yeah. Well, but the music is still there and people can go back and listen to it. And whether it's the Capitol stuff or the MCA material, it's all really, really well done. And the vocal harmonies are there on every single album. Graeham, if somebody were to ask you what the Little River Band sounds like your influences, I hear R&B, I hear country, I hear soul, I hear a lot of different things on these records. What category do we put this band into?
Well, there isn't one, because if if you think about, if you just listen to masterpieces, you will hear all of those things. I mean, we open with My Lady and Me, which is sort of like a country rock thing. We really rock out on something like Just Say That You Love Me, which was, getting into, not hard rock, but it's getting up there.
Yeah.
And then we've got incredible ballads. We've got, live performances with strings, orchestras, and it's just anything. And so the thing that, if people just listen to the ultimate hits or our hit records, they're getting a tenth of what the band was able to. Like, how would you categorize the Beatles, who can do Helter Skelter and then do Penny Lane, or do Because, or do Got to Get You Into My Life? I mean, you can't categorize them,
right?
Because every song that they did, Eleanor Rigby, then they do Yesterday, then they do Rock and Roll Music or something.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what we did. We never thought, oh, well, we can't do that because it's not really it's not our sound. But anything was our sound. If we had a song and we loved that song, that's what we would record. And if it needed 2 violins and a triangle and vocals, that's what we would put out. And we didn't think, well, okay, we've got to do a particular sound.
Yeah.
We would, and the same with my writing. I would write like a beautiful love ballad, but then I might write a rock song or something. Whereas if you look at a lot of the bands, like Led Zeppelin, there's no way they would do that. They do Led Zeppelin, and they do, they wouldn't do like a folk song like Peter, Paul and Mary. Well, we would, because I loved Peter, Paul and Mary. I thought they were awesome.
Yeah.
So I love Louis Armstrong. I love Sinatra. And so if I was listening to Sinatra, or if I was listening to Peter, Paul and Mary, then I might write a song because I've been listening to that. I never copied anything, but I would think, well, yeah, this has got a bit of a Dylan influence or a bit of a Peter, Paul and Mary influence, but it's not a copy. It's just that the style of music. And then for instance, when we remixed Just Say That You Love Me, which is on the masterpieces, my point of reference there for the remix was ZZ Top, because I loved their song Legs, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
And so our song Just Say That You Love Me is inspired by that. It's nothing like it, but it's inspired by that energy that they got happening. Because with ZZ Top, they like everything they had that sort of, that was their sound and that was their style. But we did one song in that style, not a whole album or anything. We just did one song inspired by that. But you can't categorize that, because how can you categorize a band that can do that? And then we can do Reminiscing, and then we can do Cool Change, and and then there's like the amazing bass parts that George McArdle came up with say Help Us On Its Way. That was sort of maybe that's a Boz Scaggs type of thing, like Lowdown. I mean, there's another influence. They're just everywhere, our influences, and it wasn't just me. It was that we were avid. All of the guys in the band were just music fans, and so George McArdle would be listening to Stanley Clarke, and Derek would be listening to a drummer, be listening to Pat Metheny, and of course I would be soaking all this up, and so Derek might say to me, have a listen to this Pat Metheny thing, or George might say, look, listen to this Jaco Pastorius thing. Wow. Well, I would just take all that in, and then when I'm writing a song, I think, maybe I can try a bit of that. So that's how I wrote in such a wide palette. It was because I was listening and being exposed to so many things, really mainly through the guys in the band. I mean, Beeb in particular would be always buying a new record every week, and he introduced me to Hall & Oates, so like just everything. I was very blessed with being exposed to new stuff of the day that I personally would not have found had my colleagues not brought it into the room for me. Because I'm an isolated person, Dave. I sit in my room writing songs, and I don't voluntarily go out into the world and look for stuff.
Yeah.
But everyone else in the band is out in the world looking for stuff, and I was a fortunate receiver of their research and what they were excited about. I was then able to say, "Oh, wow, that's truly amazing." So that's when that just educated me. So I was self-educated with my friends and colleagues.
Graeham, are you still writing?
No, I'm not actually, Dave. It's interesting because I wrote my last song, which is not released, in 2016. I've got another album that I will release. I finished all the vocals, and I just, the ideas or the desire to write songs is not with me anymore. I've never been one to pick up a guitar each day and try and write a song. I wait for a really interesting idea to come into my mind, and then I put my songwriting abilities and talents to make that into a song. So if the songs don't arrive into my soul, then I don't write. And so that stopped around about, as I say, 2016, 2017. So I do other things in life. I do a lot of study. I work on my house. I've got my children. I'm living life.
Sure.
I don't know whether I will ever write another song. I don't know. It's not something that I need to do. Different than someone like possibly Paul McCartney, who needs to perform and also needs to write all the time. But I've never been like that. I've never felt that I needed to write. I've waited till something has come to me, and then that I've just responded to that. So I'm more a person that sort of waits for things to lead me to the next thing.
Sure.
So now I'm just letting it all go, and I spent 12 years working on this musical. I've got an incredible, with my son Joshua, wonderful musical that could be a movie, a Netflix series, or a live stage musical, but I've not been able to get the funding for it. And I say yet because I just leave that now. I've got this ready to go. It's an amazing story, and it's would make a wonderful anything. And so it's there, it's done, it's written, it's ready to go, and I wait. And I may not live to ever see it get up, but it's still there. And my sons might take it and do something with it. But so I just do whatever the next thing is. And so at the moment, I'm just relaxing.
Just enjoying life, right? So
enjoying life and talking to people about masterpieces and the ultimate hits. And because it's been very constant for me over the last, even since when I left the band in the early 90s. I've done, I think it's 5 or so solo albums, written, like I've said everything I want to say, Dave. That there's so much music that I've brought into the world, and I'm so very proud of it all. And I can just sit back and say, well, I think I've completed my mission in terms of that part of my life, but there's a lot of other things in my life that I'm still excited to pursue and see where that takes me.
Understood. Each year, Graeham, I see the list of nominees for the American Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it's very disappointing to me every single year. And I try not to be too upset about it, but I think of bands that should be in the Hall of Fame, and I can't think of a better band that's not in the American Rock and Roll Hall of Fame than the Little River Band. Your catalog is immense. You had a radio presence, and you still have an amazing radio presence here in the States. Does that ever bother you that you haven't even been once nominated to the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely, it does, because and equal to that is the vocal group Hall of Fame. I mean, really. And then there's a third one, which is for myself, would be the American Songwriters Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And I've written 6 top 10 American hits, and like that's what I mean in that. In my where I am now, I'm 76 this year. I'm 75 now, but I'm 76 this year. To me, that there's still some wonderful experiences that could await us, and one of them might be getting into the American Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because I don't understand what the reticence is. We're not the only band that should be in there. But I guess with all of these things, that they're very political. I don't know how you even get into this stuff. I mean, how you could even have a vocal group Hall of Fame and not have Little River Band in it is just completely beyond me. Mm-hmm. Because most people who just take a listen to our work, it's hard to not include us in the top 5 greatest vocal bands of all time.
Agreed.
In history.
Agreed.
And yet we can't seem to, the people that are in charge of the stuff, I mean, what are they listening to? And I see bands in there who I like that don't hold a candle to us vocally. So, I mean, what do you do? It's just, so disappointment is probably not the word. It's more like, it's just the way the world is. I mean, the crap seems to rise to the top pretty easily, and the really good stuff in life seems to struggle. And that's just the way the world is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well put. So are you still in contact with the other guys in the band, or is that, kind of over because you're not out there performing anymore?
Partly. I have good contacts with Beeb, because we've always been very, very close. We email a lot. We don't talk much on the phone because he lives in Nashville. I live in Melbourne. I actually called, on the 18th of February, it was Derek Pellicci's 70th birthday. So I called Derek and wished him and a good happy birthday. And as we always do, we had an awesome long chat on the phone. And yeah, so I guess the way I could put it is, how many people are still in contact with colleagues that they worked with 40 years ago?
Yeah.
You might keep 1 or 2 friends. I don't keep in contact with Glenn Shorrock. I mainly keep in contact with George McArdle. I ring, we speak occasionally. And I actually got a call from Roger McLaughlin this week. Roger, I went to dinner his place a year or so ago, I think. But I think we're connected because of the enormous success that we had. And I think there is a great respect for each other. And so it's sort of like, if you were in the Beatles, those 4 guys, what they went through, no one else would understand. And it's the same with our band, in that there were there were a few guys that went through a thing, and it's something that even their wives and their best friends can't share with them because they weren't there. Whereas we can say, remember that gig when this happened and that happened. And there's that point of connection that we will always have until the day that we're not here anymore. So I guess one wonderful thing would be if we did get in the American Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they're going to have to hurry up because we're getting older. We're still all here, but that won't necessarily be the case for too much longer. Someone might go. So that would be a thing that would bring us back together for a one last time. Yeah, and that would be wonderful.
Yeah, and I think it would reintroduce Americans to who's really behind the music. We'll put it that way.
Exactly. And I agree. I think maybe one of the things that I might just want to make a mention of, and you alluded to it earlier, was the fact of these new releases. It has our faces on the cover. That was a big motivation for doing this, because without rehashing it all again, it's widely known now that there's an American band touring, no original members, and the public largely that attend the shows don't know that there are no original members in the band that's calling themselves Little River Band. So this was possible because we were a faceless band, in that what we never did when we were younger, we never, like the Beatles, we never promoted ourselves individually. We never had our photos on the cover. So the important thing for me for these releases was to put it loud and clear: these are the guys that recorded the songs. These are the musicians and the singers and the writers that recorded the Little River Band catalogue. And that's why we put our photos on the cover, and all of the 6,000 word new biographies, and I think it's about 70 or 80 new photographs, all restored. It's all to show that it was all about, there were three lineups. There was the original lineup, which included Roger McLaughlin and Rick Formosa, that's bass and guitar. Mm-hmm. Then when they left, David and George came in, so that was called the classic lineup, which included, and that was Derek, myself, Beeb, Glenn, David Briggs and George McArdle. And then the third lineup of Little River Band I call the Farnham years, and that's when Glenn wasn't there, John Farnham came in, and they're the three lineups of Little River Band that are pretty much equally represented in these new releases. And so I've picked the best of those three and put my favorite recordings of those times. That's Little River Band beginning and end. So whatever else people think Little River Band might be, I'm here to say it's not. The original band is on these new releases, and we are the ones that recorded everything, sang everything, and wrote everything.
Yeah, well said again. Just, it's good that you clarified that for the audience here, so people know. Now, Graeham, these have been released on vinyl, it appears, and yes, also, like you said, a very nice CD package here. If I'm going to go order myself a copy of these, where would I go to do that?
Well, I think I'm not in America, but I guess it would be through all your digital, wherever you buy your digital recording CDs from, Amazon, I guess. And I don't know, Walmart. I mean, I'm not an American, I don't know, but wherever you buy CDs from, this should be available. And also wherever you buy your vinyl from, the same from that. But everything is listenable and downloadable from the digital platforms. If you're on Spotify, you can hear it all, you can play it all, it's all there. But digitally, not only are ultimate hits and masterpieces there, but all of the 10 studio albums are there with 14 new bonus tracks. So wow, that's all on Spotify now and other digital platforms. But I must point out, and I know it's a little bit sensitive to talk about this for you, but the big problem that we've got is that the American band have taken control of our Spotify page. So when you go on to the Spotify page, our photos, you see their photos, and our photos and our bios have been deleted by Wayne Nelson, who is in charge of the American band, but our albums are all there mixed in with all the re-recordings. So that's a disappointment for us that that Spotify would not support us and allow our photos to be the banner across the top. But the music's still there, and like Reminiscing's coming up to about 93 million plays, I think now. So wow, it's clearly that when you look at all of the plays on the songs on, say, Spotify, it's all the original recordings that are getting played
Yeah.
and all the re-recordings. It's like something that shouldn't be there, but it is there. So people are slowly being educated and just ignoring it.
Yeah. Just ignore it. So, these albums have kind of a classy black cover with the gold box around it, and then the picture of you guys. I think that's a good way to distinguish it from the other versions of these songs that are out there. And you're right. If you go and Google these songs or do a random search, you're going to come up with like 20 versions of Reminiscing. And
it's ridiculous.
yeah,
it's absolutely insane. Because the public want one version. They want the original version.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They don't want some half-assed re-recording version from nobody that was on the record. It's crazy. Who wants that?
I mean, I don't want to go down this road too hard with you, because I think the first time we had you on, we really we kind of got into this. And I know it's a big problem, and I wanted to really talk about the remasters and the masterpieces and how great these collections sound. And I would urge everybody to go and listen to these masterpieces. These are songs that are just breathtaking. They're melodic. There are twists and turns. As we talked about, there's not one style of music represented here. But Graeham, when you wrote Reminiscing, you must have known that you had something that was just a little otherworldly. Like, you combined, almost like two different eras of music, and lyrically too. This was just such a beautiful song, and something that people are going to listen to 1,000 years from now.
I agree. It will be around 1,000 years. It's one of the unique recordings ever made, and that, apart from me writing the song, the input from the band members. Every note. Glenn's Shorrock's incredible vocal, David Briggs' amazing rhythm part, George's bass, Derek's wonderful conga part. Derek played the conga part on that as well as the drums. Bear Birtles played an amazing little guitar riff thing that comes in the third verse, and the vocal harmonies. And then the flugelhorn from Bobby Venier at the end. It's magical. So when I wrote it, I knew it was pretty wonderful, but I didn't know how could I know what its journey would be, and how amazing that it's my yesterday, if you like, and it's double any plays of any other song we've had with our band, and it will live pretty much forever. And we've somehow done a piece of amazing art that was a moment in time, which had amazing contributions from our producer John Boylan and also our recording engineer Ern Rose. It was just all the people in that room created, and let me say, the Rhodes part from Peter Jones was massive, because we recorded it twice before with different keyboard players, and then when we did it our third time, when Peter Jones sat down with us with his awesome jazz repertoire of chords and playing, it then took it down that jazz road that I always wanted it to go down, because I didn't have the musical knowledge to do that. But Peter came in, and then we got in behind him where he was laying it down for us. So there's so much to thank for the way that song turned out. I wrote it in 20 minutes, half an hour. It was like a spiritual download. It came into me. It was a product of everything I loved about growing up looking at American black and white movies, the fantasy of having a magic relationship with your girl. All of that was the life that I wanted to live and that I wanted to experience, which I may say I still have not ever experienced, but I never give up hope. That's what I wrote about, you see. So my songwriting was fueled by the life I wanted to have. And that was depicted for me in a lot of those, like Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, Nelson Eddy, Jeanette MacDonald, those lovely American movies from all that black and white era, and then the Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals and all of those, the 50s musicals. I just loved that more than anything. I've been watching a movie a couple of times this week called Strangers When We Meet, which has got Kim Novak, my favorite actress of all time, and Kirk Douglas. And I mean, I could write 8 songs around the, or I used to be able to, around the subject of that movie. And so often I would watch a movie and then take the energy of that and then write a song out of that, putting myself in the character of what was going on in that story. So yeah, it was just time. In 1977, April 9th or April 4th, 77, when I sat down and wrote that song. And I thought, wow, I think the main thought I probably had was, when I started writing songs, I was well aware of what the people like Irving Berlin and Cole Porter had done. And so I was a very good self-critic of myself and thought, well, this is pretty good, but it's not really as good as Night and Day, or it's not as good as Always, say by Irving Berlin. But when I wrote Reminiscing, I thought, I reckon I may have done it. I think I've gotten to the level that Jerome Kern or Johnny Mercer or a Cole Porter or Richard Rogers. I think I could then say, well, look, Cole, you've written Night and Day, but I've written Reminiscing, and I'm sure that he would have acknowledged the level of songwriting. And it was a mission that I'd spent many years trying to get to. And so I thought then I really arrived as a songwriter, because I understood then how a song needs to make you feel once you've written it. Because when you write a song, you need to, how does this make me feel? Because if I'm not brought to tears by one of my songs that I write when I've finished it, I can't expect it to get to anyone else.
Yeah.
Like, I put every ounce of my being into a song that I'm writing, and it reduces me to tears many times. And I'm in awe of some of the lines that come through, some of them, the lines that are given to me. And so when a song of mine gives me that reaction, the same way that I react to when I hear the wonderful songs in the American Standard Repertoire, then I think, well, okay, I'm a member of that club, and that's what I always aspired to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make you feel, I don't know what the word is here, but when I talk to you, I feel like I'm talking to like a Brian Wilson character or a Paul McCartney character. You know, I understand these songs. I understand how good they are, and I'm fortunate to have these conversations with you. So I appreciate you coming on. Graeham, you're a treasure, you know, here in the States and obviously in your home country. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. Any final thoughts, last words regarding these collections, or anything else you'd like to say?
I would just encourage everybody. These 2 releases should be in everybody's record collection. I mean, I'm getting feedback from a variety of people. One guy said, "Look, I'm a metalhead. I was into Metallica, but I love this." There was one guy said, "Look, I'm an old black guy from Detroit, and I just love Little River Band." So it's lovely to know that we are connecting with all cultures and with all styles. And I think there's something here for everybody. And I think that any record collection would be incomplete without Little River Band's ultimate hits and masterpieces. It just would be incomplete.
All
So
right, people. Well,
I would encourage them to go and buy it. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, go on over to Amazon and,
Yeah.
grab yourself. I want people to go out and get physical copies, though. None of these digital downloads. I want physical. I want LPs and CDs in everybody's collection. We need to patronize this band because they've given so much to the world of music. Graeham Goble, thank you so much for being here, sir.
Thank you, Dave. A pleasure as always. Thank you.